Hello there, my friends. It's Cassie. Welcome back for another video here on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be making a fun Halloween card. Let's talk about what we're using. These are the Simon Hurley Create stamps. This is new. It's called Fall Sampler. We have matching dies for that. We're also using the Flip Flop Circles and some brand new Lunar paste called Refined Copper. I want to show you how we can mask those stencils, and yeah, it's going to be... I end up really liking how this card turned out, that's for sure. So I have a piece of craft cardstock from my stash that measures 5 inches by 7 inches. We're going to be making an A7 card, or A7 size card, and I'm using some like post-it tape, and I am lining that up on my Tonic platform, going in about 1/4 of an inch. So I am using those lines on my Tonic platform to be able to hold this down. So pardon my head as I just make sure that I'm getting that in there pretty well. And then I'm kind of eyeballing it here. I actually did a surprisingly good job. But on the other one, I decide not to eyeball it on the other side. And I'll peel away that tape just to make sure that I'm doing 1/4 of an inch, because I do want this to be fairly uniform. So I'll peel this tape back just a little bit, and then I can eyeball exactly where that piece of tape needs to go so that I have about the same size border all the way around. I will end up trimming it down later on. About 1/8 of an inch all the way around, but yeah, so we're just gonna push that tape back, making sure that I have about 1/4 of an inch, or I guess it's about 1/2 an inch. Yeah, it's about 1/2 of an inch. Anyway, either way, this is where we're at. So then I'm going to take the flip flop stencil and I'm going to tack that down with my magnets, and I'm going to bring in the ghost that I plan to stamp with. And so I'm moving him around. I want to cover up where he's going to be. I want there to be like a little bit of an empty space without the stencil, so that when he's in there, it's like he's got a border of the stencil around him, or at least top and bottom. So I'm going to tear my tape and then just go over the part of the stencil that I want to make sure that I don't use. So again, pardon my head, just trying to make sure that I am getting that covered well. And then I am going to bring in some Crown Me ink by Simon Hurley Create. That is a purple ink. It's a really pretty purple ink. And sorry if you did hear the cat. He is meowing. He needs attention. And I'm bringing in a blending buddy. That one's from Trinity Stamps. And I'm just going to blend that color all the way across. I do realize the stencil didn't go all the way down, so I'm just going to take some bits of tape that I have just to cover that up, because I don't want that purple to show through there. And then once that's on there, we'll finish blending that across. It does look a little bit dark, and I'll be honest, I was a little concerned because this is on craft paper, and I wanted that to make sure to look purple when I pull that away. But as that dries, it absolutely is quite purple, and it looks good. Looks really good. So we'll take off our magnets so that we can move our stencil, and I am going to need to clean that off because we're going to bring in that Lunar paste. So once that's cleaned off, I flip it upside down again. I apologize for my head. I'm trying to line that up a little bit. Again, just trying to cover up the area that I don't want any ink or Lunar paste with some of that tape. And then I'll line this up so that we've got the bottom half of the circle lined up with the top half of the circle. And this is where I will bring in that Refined Copper Lunar paste. This is new, and I thought that it's such a pretty fall color. And yeah, definitely had to peel that so that I don't get that paste where I don't want it. But this is such a pretty color for fall. It's that beautiful copper color, like that orangey, deep orangey copper color. And yes, so I'm using my Simon Hurley Create tools to spread that around to make sure it's nice and even. And it does such a good job, and it doesn't go under the stencil, which oftentimes I have trouble with that, well, from time to time, but not today. I sure did not. I think this tool really helps that, to be honest with you. And then I'll I'll wipe off with my palette knife the rest of it, and then just spread it on there just to make sure. And then we're going to end up having to clean all this stuff off. We'll take it to the sink, but I'll peel that away, and you're going to see how cool that looks, especially with a border. And the reason I decided to do a border is because this stencil is a 6x6 stencil, and the card I wanted to make is a 5x7, so that wasn't going to go top to bottom. You could shift it and it would work just fine, but I really do like the border on there. So that's how that border looks. Oh, it makes me happy. And it will be a little bit smaller because I'm going to trim it down. But first, I'm going to hit this with my heat tool. I'm going to mostly dry it. Now, if you don't keep your heat tool moving, you can cause that lunar paste to bubble, but just keep your heat tool moving and you should be good to go. I'll need to bring in my Misty because I want to stamp out the words Happy Halloween from our fall sampler stamp set. And I want to make sure that I have a crisp image. So I'm going to ink that up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, which is a black pigment ink, and that will come up nice and crisp on that craft cardstock. And with it being in the Misty, I can stamp it more than once. So I stamp it once. It looks good, but I want it to be darker, so I'm going to stamp it twice. And that works out really, really well. All right, so here's why I wanted to do a little bit of experimenting. So I'm going to take our ghost and we're going to use our Misty, and I'm going to stamp him just using a white pigment ink. So this is the Shark Tooth ink by Ink on 3. And I'm just inking that up. I'm going to stamp that down. I wanted to see how that would look on that craft cardstock. And you know what? It actually looks pretty good. I stamped it more than once. And right now it looks nice and it looks pretty good. But it is going to dry back and it isn't going to be as vibrant. And so the more I looked at it, the more I realized, you know what? I have the matching dies. Let's do something else. So I'm going to take that same craft cardstock and I want to stamp these flowers because I'm looking at this going, it's not going to work. And so as I heat it, it dries back a little bit and it doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look the way I want it to look. So this is where I'm going to bring in another piece of that craft cardstock and I'm going to restamp our ghost. So we'll put our ghost down and then I'm realizing I want to stamp the flowers first. So we'll stamp our flowers using that Crown Me ink. And we'll stamp it a couple times to make sure we have a nice dark purple ink stamped image. And then we'll clean that off. And the ghost is quite easy to line up over the top of that. So I'm going to line up my ghost after I use some, I'm going to heat set it, but then I'm going to use some, an embossing tool. So that's an anti-static powder tool just to make sure that powder doesn't stick to where I don't want it. And then I'll take my ghost, we'll put it over the top of the flowers. And then I've decided I'm going to stamp this out using a clear embossing ink. And then I have my white embossing powder off to the side. You can't see it. I wasn't paying attention there. But it is off to the side. And I'm going to ink this up, stamp that down, and then cover that with my white detail embossing powder. And then we'll heat set that after we get that covered. But already it's looking good. So as we heat set that and that dries, you know, it'll go from a matte finish to a shiny finish. I'm so happy with how that looks. And it's obviously much more vibrant. I love it. So now we'll bring in the matching die that goes along with this. Die cut that out, and then I want to use some foam squares to put over the top of or behind that so that we can pop our ghost up and give even extra dimension to this card. I'll use some liquid glue to adhere this down to a 5x7 card. And then, like I said, I did trim that down just a little bit so we do have a white border. It kind of ties in with our little white ghost. And I can't stop there. I decide I want to bring in that sentiment that says, "Here for the booze." And so we'll stamp that on the inside. And I apologize if you hear bells. And my crazy cat is all over the place just crying. But that's going to finish off our card for today. I hope you love it as much as I do. If you do, hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Thanks, everybody. Bye.